Have you ever wondered what makes a leader truly great? Is it strength? Is it wisdom? Or is it something more? The historian Jack Weatherford, in his book Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, asks us to look beyond the legends. He suggests that the true genius of Genghis Khan wasn't just in his might, but in his mind. He was a thinker, a learner, an organizer. He saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be. This wasn't merely a story of conquest, but a tale of transformation, of a man who took a scattered group of nomadic tribes and forged them into a force that would reshape the world. How did one person achieve so much with so little to start with? Let's journey back in time to the vast, windswept plains of Mongolia, a place we call the Steppe. Imagine a world of endless grass, rolling hills, and a sky so big it feels like it could swallow you whole. This was the world of a young boy named Temujin, who would one day be known as Genghis Khan. His early life was filled with hardship and challenge, not unlike the difficult levels in a video game where you must learn new skills to survive. He wasn't born a king in a grand palace. He was born in a felt tent, learning to ride horses almost as soon as he could walk. It was these early lessons in survival that sharpened his senses and taught him to be resourceful, patient, and incredibly observant of the world around him. The world around Temujin was a fractured one. The Mongol tribes were constantly fighting amongst themselves, like siblings who couldn't agree on anything. There was no single leader, no shared goal, just a cycle of raids and revenge that kept everyone weak and divided. Imagine a playground where every kid is in their own little group, and no one trusts anyone else. It would be impossible to play a big game of soccer, wouldn't it? Temujin saw this. He understood that as long as his people were fighting each other, they could never be truly strong or safe from the much bigger, more powerful empires that surrounded them. Before we can understand the battle, we must first understand the fighters. On one side, we have Genghis Khan and his Mongols. Think of them as expert shepherds of the steppe. They lived their entire lives outdoors, moving with the seasons, their wealth measured in horses and sheep, not gold. Their homes were portable tents called gurs, which they could pack up and move in a matter of hours. This lifestyle made them incredibly tough, resilient, and self-sufficient. Every man, woman, and child knew how to ride a horse, how to find their way across vast, unmarked landscapes, and how to survive in harsh weather. They were masters of their environment, moving like the wind across the open plains. On the other side stood the mighty Jin Dynasty, a powerful empire that ruled over much of what is now northern China. If the Mongols were shepherds, the Jin were like the kings of a giant golden castle. They had enormous cities with thick towering walls, a massive army of foot soldiers, and advanced technology like catapults and early explosives. They had a complex government, a bustling economy, and a culture rich with art and literature. From their perspective, the nomadic tribes on their northern border were little more than uncultured barbarians, a nuisance to be managed but never a true threat. They were wealthy, powerful, and very, very confident in the strength of their walls and the size of their armies. For many years, the Jin dynasty had cleverly kept the Mongol tribes weak by playing them against each other. It was a strategy of divide and conquer. They would support one tribe to fight another, ensuring that the nomads were always too busy with their internal conflicts to unite and pose a collective threat to the Jin Empire. Genghis Khan knew he could never defeat the Jin army in a traditional head-on battle. Their army was simply too big, and their cities were too well defended. So he didn't play their game. Instead, he used the skills the Mongols had perfected over centuries on the steppe: speed and surprise. The Mongol army was composed almost entirely of cavalry, soldiers on horseback. A Mongol warrior could ride for days, eating and even sleeping in the saddle. This gave them incredible mobility. They could appear seemingly out of nowhere, strike a target, and then vanish back into the plains before the slow-moving Jin infantry could even react. It was like a game of tag, where one player is on a super-fast bicycle and the other is walking. This tactic is often called guerrilla warfare. Instead of fighting one giant battle, the Mongols would fight hundreds of small ones. They would raid supply lines, cutting off food and resources to the Jin armies and cities. One of their most famous tactics was the feigned retreat. The Mongol cavalry would charge, clash briefly with the enemy, and then pretend to flee in panic. The disciplined Jin soldiers, believing they had won, would often break formation and give chase. This was the trap. Once the enemy was spread out and disorganized, the Mongols would turn their horses around and attack the now vulnerable soldiers, winning a decisive victory. Imagine a swarm of hornets attacking a bear. The bear is much bigger and stronger, but the hornets are fast. They come from all directions, and they never stay in one place long enough to be swatted. The Mongols were those hornets. They created chaos and confusion, wearing down the much larger Jin army bit by bit. They avoided the enemy's strengths, their large infantry formations and fortified positions, and attacked their weaknesses, their long, slow supply chains and their inability to cope with such a fast-moving, unpredictable foe. One of the most brilliant things about Genghis Khan was that he knew he didn't have all the answers. He was incredibly curious and a fantastic listener. When his army first came up against the great walled cities of the Jin Dynasty, they had a huge problem. The Mongols were masters of open field battles, but they had no idea how to break down massive stone walls. But Genghis Khan saw this not as a defeat, but as a learning opportunity. He was humble enough to admit what he didn't know and smart enough to find the people who did. Whenever the Mongols conquered a new town or captured an enemy force, they would seek out the engineers, the scholars, and the craftsmen. Instead of discarding them, Genghis Khan would welcome them into his ranks. He was particularly interested in Chinese and Persian engineers who were experts in siege warfare. These captured experts were treated with respect and were asked to teach the Mongols their skills. Soon, the Mongol army, which once only had horses and bows, now had a sophisticated engineering corps capable of building powerful siege weapons like massive catapults, battering rams, and even giant crossbows called ballistae. In the world before Genghis Khan, power was almost always inherited. If your father was a tribal chief or a nobleman, you would likely become one too, whether you were skilled or not. Genghis Khan saw this system as incredibly wasteful and unfair. He decided to build his new society and his army on a revolutionary idea: meritocracy. In Genghis Khan's army, a common shepherd who proved to be a brave and clever soldier could rise to become a general commanding thousands of men. This approach broke down the old tribal rivalries that had kept the Mongols divided for so long. Genghis Khan reorganized the entire army. Instead of grouping soldiers by their tribe or clan, he mixed them all up into new decimal units. Groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Genghis Khan's greatest achievement was perhaps not conquering lands, but conquering the hearts of his people. He understood that an army is only as strong as the bonds that hold it together. He established a set of laws known as the Yasa. It created a single standard of behavior for everyone in the empire. The law demanded absolute loyalty, not just to the Khan, but to one's fellow soldiers. This created a powerful sense of collective responsibility. Soldiers didn't just fight for themselves. They fought for the person standing next to them. They were truly a band of brothers. So what can we, living centuries later in a world of smartphones and skyscrapers, learn from a 13th century warrior? The story of Genghis Khan's success against the Jin Dynasty is more than just a history lesson. It's a timeless guide to overcoming great challenges. Think about his use of speed and surprise. In today's fast-paced world, whether in business, sports, or even in our personal projects, the ability to act quickly and think creatively, to be agile, is often what separates success from failure. His hunger for knowledge is another powerful lesson. This reminds us of the importance of being a lifelong learner. In a world that is always changing, the most successful people are those who are curious, who listen to others, and who are not afraid to admit they don't know everything. And what about his principle of meritocracy? Building a team, a community, or a company where everyone has a chance to succeed based on their talent and hard work is the fairest and most effective way to operate. In the end, the story of Genghis Khan is a testament to the power of vision, unity, and adaptation. He teaches us that our starting point in life doesn't have to define our destination. So let me leave you with a question to think about. What is the Jin Dynasty in your life? What is that big, intimidating challenge that seems impossible to overcome? And what lessons from a shepherd boy who became the great Khan can you use to face it?